our next guest.
Well, Teddy is a tough act to follow, I will say. But well, we've had such a comprehensive look this morning at various kinds of philanthropy, from basic needs to infrastructure to recreation in the community, and the critical role that strategic funding and partnerships, how those address those issues. So now we want to bring to a why the what are the core values that keep us hold a community together. And we're honored to welcome Reverend Kelli Clement, the pastor at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames, or the UUFA. Reverend Clement, thank you for joining us to help connect the dots between service, faith, and community responsibility. For those unfamiliar with the Unitarian Universalist tradition, could you briefly introduce the UUFA and share how your core values and principles, perhaps, guide your congregation's involvement in the Story County community?
Good morning, Pete and Anna. So delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Um, yes, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Ames has been a presence in the community for almost 80 years. We are over on Highland Avenue, just on the west side of the ISU campus. And from the beginning, the organization, the congregation, has really been about fulfilling our values in the world. In Unitarian Universalism, we say that it's less important what we say we believe than how we act in the world. How do we behave together? How do we create community, support each other, and live into our values? And some of the values, the primary values that we work with are justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. And that's all with love at the center. So that's how we articulate these values. And I think the one that we're talking about specifically today is generosity. That is propelled, motivated by a love for humanity and the world that can be.
So it's not just a material gift, it's a spirit of giving, it sounds like, that you're referring to.
I would say that is absolutely so. Um, it's one thing to write a check and feel like we're done with our activity, and boy, checks are important. I'm a relatively new Ames resident, and I am going to set up my recurring donation to KHOI today. So donation is important, right? Um, Mike gave a good pitch, and so and our continued interest and building community and creating relationships and creating that interdependent web is what makes us that spirit of generosity is what continues to make us connected.
And there's a connection, Mike, to the UU Church and KHOI, if I remember correctly. So thank you so much for listening to Mike's passionate pitch and responding to that. And so, but I bet you, Mike, you're happy hearing that.
Yeah, I'm as giddy as a schoolgirl. Yeah, that's what it's about. That's it right there. And yeah, in terms of KHOI's history, the initial license was applied for out of the Unitarian Fellowship here in Ames.
I
And
did not know that.
yeah, a lot of our key people are members. A lot of our founders and a lot of our ongoing folks are members of that church. And there seems, I mean, I was at a community radio station in Kansas City before this, and there was that same kind of hand in glove relationship with the Unitarian Fellowship there. We would broadcast there. They would have a forum every week on a different community topic, and we would record and broadcast it. And so there does seem to be but they're both about, uplifting community, but in an ecumenical way, I guess is a good way of saying it. That it's you can be who you are, and be welcome here, much like the fellowship. So if you value that, please, this is a good time right now. KHOIFM.org, hit donate. That's the way it happens. And
Thanks very much, Mike, and Reverend Clement, for your commitment to KHOI. One thing I think about with all the faith communities around Story County, that they do play such an important role in cultivating generosity, because we know, like, there's sometimes there are messages in society grounded in the media, grounded on meanness, and sometimes those are grounded on other kinds of values. And so one thing it seems like that happens in a faith community and in the UUFA that's really important is instilling hope and inspiration for people. And could you talk a little bit about how how you do that through programming and so forth in your community congregation?
Boy, I think that is such a key right now. Um I was just in a meeting where somebody talked about stubborn hope. And I feel like that's a little bit of a mantra for me right now, because people do feel desperate. There is a kind of meanness in the air. And I think that there are some kinds of media that exacerbate that. One of the things I appreciate about KHOI is the kind of bringing together of folks. I think we have more to be hopeful about than excuse me, than we might initially know. And one of the things that we want to do at the UUFA is to cultivate hope. Um, Joan Baez famously said that action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair. And so um, we are trying to give people opportunities for action, um, create the conditions, spiritual conditions within people to say, yes, there are things to be hopeful about. Yes, community is stronger than my individual isolated despair. I think that's such a key. The organizations that Karen was talking about, and the amazing food at first that Patty was talking about, give people ways to come together to do things that we cannot and should not try to do alone. And so it's community radio, it's the community foundation. That we are a fellowship. Those are not accidental names. They are really the key, and hope lies there. Liberation lies there in our being able to be together and learn from each other. And if one day somebody's feeling down, I get to hope for them. And if I'm feeling down, they get to hope for me. We hold each other's stories, and we're kind of that net together. Boy, I can preach on that.
Well, and I think what you're talking about, that hope and the connection, excuse me, is what we see through all these volunteer organizations and Food at First and nonprofits that are where so many people are pulling together on behalf of the community to do important work. Anna, I'm going to toss it over to you if you have a question or comment for Reverend Clement.
Well, I just appreciate those words of inspiration. I think during this time when we're trying to figure out, just like with the SNAP benefits being removed, and then trying to figure out problem solve to be able to make sure that no one is hungry in our community. And for Karen Sebdi, who comes every third Monday of the month to learn about what are they doing to be able to help lift up those nonprofit organizations and the cities and communities that are doing great work to be able to help us be our best. And we can't do it alone. We can't do it without KHOI saying to me, 5 years ago saying, yes, how would you like to have a program to lift up the stories of people with disabilities to be able to make sure that they have a voice? And I'll never forget that first interview with Daniel, my co-host, who said, I know why we're doing this show, Anna. It's because for my parents and for me, we know that we are no longer alone. And that is the
Mm,
magic of
mm.
KHOI. Every time I almost do the ugly cry thinking about that. And that's why I remain connected to KHOI. It has such a special place in my heart. So then I went from doing the I Am Able Iowa show to the Anna Ginger show that talks about adoption and foster care stories. And so for those that feel alone because they don't feel like they know the beginning of their stories and feel lost, to be able to hear other stories about what do we have in common. My adoption story might inform how I feel about ICE coming into communities as a transracial adoptee. I was telling Pete earlier that I was worried about going to a community because I'm worried. I have my ID, I have my birth certificate, I have all that information because I am afraid. And when I come here and I hear the stories of inspiration and encouragement and people saying, I am here to help lift you up as a community, that is incredibly powerful. So I thank KHOI from the bottom of my heart for giving us a platform to come together. I would never be able to have time with Karen Sebdi. I could like stalk her every day and say, I'm coming to see you. But now I know every third Monday of the month, I get to spend time with Karen or Daryl and all the wonderful people that are part of this community. So what KHOI does, what you're hearing is I would not have any friends if it weren't for KHOI. So come and support it with $53. I turned 53 this month. So $53 can go a long way to support our radio station. So I don't know if that what you want me to say, Pete? Peter Thomas.
That was exactly what I wrote out for you.
Well, and Pete,
Well,
as we come to a conclusion, you did a message about generosity this weekend.
yes, at a UU congregation, in fact. Um, so it's near and dear to us, these faith communities like the Unitarian Universalists. And thank you to all our guests today. We've had a great hour together. Remember that you can also hear our programs online at khoifm.org and find links to our guests and information you heard during this program. Our website is khoifm.org. The program is engineered by Mike Murphy. Thank you, Mike. A heartfelt thank you to our producer, Lynn Carey, and Dennis Hart for your Monday report. And thanks to